with a hole in my soul. Life I've been living is getting kind of old. I don't know where I'm going, but I know just what I need. So come a little bit closer to me. I need your love, 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 like I need the air I breathe. I need your love, 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 like I need my eyes to see. I need your love, 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 girl, I need it all the time. I need your love, 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 I need it to survive. I got the blues in my shoes and I just can't move. Don't have a clue what I'm gonna do next. Well, I'm looking for a reason for the life I've been given, but it's making me more depressed. I gotta do some soul searching to find out what I gotta do. Well, I know just what I need. What I really need is you. I need your love, 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 like I need the air I breathe. I need your love, 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 like I need my eyes to see. I need your love, 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 girl, I need it all the time. I need your love, 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 I need it to survive. Here we go now. Your love, 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 like I need the air I breathe. I need your love, 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 like I need my eyes to see. I need your love, 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 girl, I need it all the time. I need your love, 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 I need it to survive. I need your la 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 love. I bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. A dilly da, ska, dilly da, yeah, dilly bop, dilly shabba, bibba labba, skilly dabba, dilly labba, skilly bibbity back, goodbye, shabba, dilly labba, the beep, with a ball, bring it right back to me. Excuse me, is it time for my break? 'Cause this job isn't full of stress. Is it any wonder I can't sleep? Is it any wonder I can't breathe? And I wish that I could go somewhere far away. And I wish that I could understand the life put in my hands. And I wish, and I wish, and I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish again. Penny, pick it up, but the luck never seems to come my way. I wake up in the middle of the night with this funny urge to pray. Is it any wonder I can't sleep? Is it any wonder I can't breathe? And I wish that I could go somewhere far away. And I wish that I could understand the life put in my
I think we're about ready to start. We have a special guest tonight from quite a while ago. He's actually fairly old. You'll see. Tom Lawson. Tom Lawson, can you come out, please? Thank you. You're going to speak right into the top of it.
Here, hold that. I prepared a few remarks for this evening that I think you'll find appropriate.
You're going to hold that right up.
I think you can hear me all right just this way, can't you?
Yeah.
Can everybody hear what I'm saying? No. Okay, you can't. Here we go. First,
Yeah,
it is with...
I'll hold.
Thank you, young man.
He's not used to modern technology. He's from the horse and
not at
wagon
all.
day.
First, it is with deep gratitude that I thank whatever powers that may be for my miraculous return to Scituate for these last 2 days. And as you will imagine, I am dismayed by the multiple of changes that I have observed in my old hometown. I'm pleased with the sight of those views that remain familiar. Unfortunately, my beautiful farm and its fields have become overgrown with trees and houses. I used to be able to see the ocean from my front porch, and now nothing but trees and roofs. But this hall, this clubhouse of the Scituate boys in blue that fought for the North in the Great War of the Rebellion, remains true to the spirit of the Grand Army of the Republic. And the park just up the street, captured in these huge photographs, they still salute the Scituate veterans of the Great Civil War, the Spanish War, and the Great War to end all wars. But sadly, I've noticed memorials to a second Great War, a police action in Asia, a war in French Indochina, and wars in far-off Persia. Still, my elephants dance. The water tower still stands. I built it in 1902 for $88,000, and I understand the town recently re-shingled it at the price of $222,000. Oh, how the almighty dollar has withered. Just across the street from my tower in the old Sloop Church stands the Cudworth Cottage, where 100 years ago it held the first meeting of the Scituate Historical Society. The club that we remember and we honor today, and we're starting the celebrations early. It was this society that rescued the Stockbridge Mill in Greenbush, one of the oldest working grist mills in America. It was this society that rescued and rebuilt the old lighthouse on Cedar Point, first lit during the Jefferson administration, and is still shining today. It was this society that placed beside the mill the refurbished Chief Justice Cushing plaque, honoring the man who wrote Scituate's Declaration of Independence, the Massachusetts Constitution, and America's first anti-slavery law. And that man was born in Scituate. It was this society that brought the old oak and bucket house where 200 years ago Woodworth wrote his famous poem. And the deep tangled wildwood is deeper and more tangled today. But it is not my task to glorify the past or mourn the future. I stand before you with the unique privilege and distinct honor to introduce the distinguished president of the Scituate Historical Society. Let's have a big round of applause for David Ball.
There's a mic. There's a mic.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello and welcome. I don't know how I'm going to ever follow in Matt's footsteps with that one. I'm going to ask Sandy McCall to come forward. He wanted to make a few quick remarks. Sandy McCall was the great-grandson of Thomas Lawson.
Thank you, David. I come here about every 10 years to find out about my family, all the stuff that I don't know. I'm from the West Coast, and in Oregon, Tom Lawson gave my grandmother as a wedding present and her husband a ranch. And he came out and he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't leave the ranch because he really was happy there. His wife, it was the first time he'd been happy since his wife had died, really. And that's, I always say the great gift he gave to us was the fact we're not trust funders. That we all had this, my grandmother literally, this sounds like a bad book, but she held off bankers at a bridge in the 1920s to keep from being foreclosed with a gun. This was his daughter. And I'm astounded when I come back here every 10 years about what you have in Scituate. All of you seem to have this wonderful sense of history. And you're honoring somebody who was not a saint by any means, but he did care for people. And unlike a lot of millionaires today, he hired teachers to teach his Italian workers English. And he told his blacksmith to make runners for sleds so they could skate, they could go down the hill leading to the railroad tracks, and he had somebody there to make sure they weren't crushed by the railroad. And he actually cared about people, and I've read so many of his letters and things like that. But I can say, despite what Matt said, I think he'd be very happy with what is here. And he would be overjoyed, literally overjoyed, to know that so many of you still remember him, and remember him fondly for maybe what he did for your ancestors, but also what he tried to do for the town. And he died in 1925, but look what you've still done. It's almost a century later, and you still have a wonderful, almost idyllic American democratic town that believes in citizenship. So that's what you make him happy.
Next, I'm going to be calling up Carol Miles.
Pull out the, pull that out there. I'm not going to do it quite yet.
Hi, Carol. Carol doesn't know why she's up here, I'm sure. Well, maybe she's figured out that something's up because her daughter is here. We're able to contact her daughter, Debbie. And Debbie, we're all right. There she is. Debbie, we were able to contact Carol's daughter, Debbie, and she's here as well. I don't even know that Debbie knows exactly what we're about to do here, but anyway. Carol and her husband Paul were very active in the society, but before that, Carol was, a lot of you don't know this, but she was the archivist at Town Hall and spent many years there with Dorothy Langley. And then she came to us and was our archivist for many, many, many years, over probably 20 years. And in 2004, Carol and her husband were named the Citizens of the Year. And I remember at that presentation, I gave her husband a Superman t-shirt, and I gave Carol some crummy rubber gloves. You remember that, Carol? She does. And I gave her the rubber gloves because every time I went into the Little Red Schoolhouse and wanted to look at some documents, she said, "You're not going to touch them with bare hands. You have to put on the rubber gloves." So anyway, so we have a presentation, a certificate of appreciation awarded to Carol Miles for teaching us, inspiring us, and encouraging us for the past 25 years and counting. in recognition of what you have done and continue to do, the President and the Board of Trustees of the Scituate Historical Society gratefully name you Archivist America. I guess I knew it, but Mary Porter, who was our present archivist, reminded me that it's America for a woman and America's for a man. That's why it's America. So, Carol? You're not going back to your seat quite yet. We have a gift for you, and you can open it right now if you like.
You can hold that.
Okay.
Wow. Oh, it's a necklace with the Lawson Tower.
We're not going to. Mary Porter's brother was the one that did the design for Lawson Tower, and we had a local jeweler make that especially for you.
Wow, beautiful.
One last thing. We are going to be naming the new archive space at the Little Red Schoolhouse the Carol Miles Archive.
Thank you so very much. I really, really appreciate it.
I'm going to be calling up Senator Patrick LaFont. Can you come up, please?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to celebrate this great day for the Scituate Historical Society and really for the town of Scituate. I thought that the remarks made of being the sort of quintessential ideal American town couldn't be more true. When you look at the investments that Scituate makes in preserving its history, I think now more so than ever before, it is important that we learn from history and that we see certain figures and certain locations that are around town that really deserve the importance of new generations of residents in Scituate and the South Shore to see those and to understand where we came from and what our history is. I love the town of Scituate. My great uncle Ed McCain was the first town administrator in Scituate, and I know that he really loved the Historical Society. And it's one of those things that, you know, each and every one of you deserves a lot of credit for what you do day in and day out with this society, making sure that the folks in Scituate understand and learn from the past. And in recognition of the 100th anniversary and in this great occasion today, we had read into the record from the Massachusetts State Senate a citation. It's an official citation from the State Senate, and be it known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its congratulations to the Scituate Historical Society in recognition of the momentous occasion of the Scituate Historical Society centennial and your extraordinary commitment to the preservation of Scituate's most cherished historical sites. And be it further known, the Massachusetts Senate extends nothing but the best wishes to the society and to all of you for best wishes for continued success. Signed by the President of the Senate, Stanley C. Rosenberg, myself, State Senator Patrick Connor. Congratulations to all of you on 100 years. Here's to 100 more.
I'm going to call Representative Jim Cantwell next.
Sure.
First of all, as a point of personal privilege, since we are in the GAR Hall, could we ask everyone to stand for one moment just to do the Pledge of Allegiance behind me? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And while you're standing, everyone who wants to see another 100 years of the Scituate Historical Society, please stand up. I got my start, and as David would know, my start in public policy was with the Marshfield Historical Commission and work that we did to try to protect and preserve the Daniel Webster estate. But we always looked up to Kathleen Laidlaw and David Ball for just the tremendous wealth of knowledge. And knowing of the society, owning now 6 buildings here in town, maintaining another 6 buildings, one of the things that all of us should have such great pleasure for being here in the GAR Hall, which is the oldest building in town. There was a Baptist meeting house before, and most recently David got a whole number of us about 10 years ago to come in and do a painting party with my cousins, David Corbin and God bless Bobby Corbin. There's just so much history here for our towns, and it's tremendous the work that you all continue doing to make sure that we never forget what has come before us. I wanted to note, by the way, 100 years ago, the president at the time was Woodrow Wilson, entering his 2nd term. We had just entered World War I. John F. Kennedy had just been born. Red Auerbach, by the way, had just been born 100 years ago, and David Ball started the Scituate Historical Society. But for each of us knowing, there's a famous statement that I love to recur, and we know Daniel Webster, who used to come through here all the time, one of his statements were, those who do not recur to the history of our ancestors and see themselves as a link from the past to the future do not do their service as citizens. David, you and all the members here of the Historical Society have done so much. I'm so proud to be here today, and I have our citation. I do want to note, I know the work of Pam Martell, Mary Porter, Bob Chesha, Dean Giacomo Andrea, everybody here. I want a round of applause for all of them for their great work putting this together. And on behalf of the House of Representatives, be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to the Scituate Historical Society in recognition of the celebration of its 100th birthday and the tremendous work that you've done over 1 century. The entire membership extends its very best wishes for continued great success. Was signed this 22nd day of July. Bob DeLeo actually signed it yesterday, and myself. Congratulations, David, Bob, everyone here. Thank you so very much for the invitation.
Thanks, Jim.
I'd like to call up.
Whoa!
I'd like to call up.
The speaker, yeah.
I'm going to call up John Danahy. Good luck with that.
It's like a cattle call.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. On behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I'm honored to be here tonight. Frankly, to say congratulations to the Historical Society. You have to think, 100 years ago, the people of this town thought there was a need. There was a need to preserve, chronicle all these stories, and all these stories that are disappearing desperately with all the people coming and going. And at least they tried to capture certain aspects, whether it's structures, whether it were personal properties, could have been paintings, could have been samples, could have been anything, of which they said, let's get together. I think from one of the historical books, they were saying there was a house that kind of created an impetus. It was the Clapp Stetson house, further down here on Country Way, on Oakhurst. And when they tore the building down in 1900, they began to realize that behind the walls, there were bricks. Bricks that were built because they were used as a garrison house for at the time, the French, the Indians were coming, And as we know, King Philip's War to attack the Stockbridge Mill. And that's when people began to realize there are stories that are hidden and they weren't captured. So I commend the people who had the vision and the foresight 100 years ago to say we need a society to protect the town of Scituate's interests, not for the sake of the people of the past, but to be able to share it for the present, but also for the people in the future. And I want to say to all the trustees and to all the members, thank you personally. Because from 100 years ago, there have been a lot of people who've come and gone who we know and some who we don't. But they've done the same thing that you're doing to continue to preserve it for our future. And so on August, I guess it's 23rd officially, it's your 100 years, how fitting it is to have a recitation and a presentation, if you will, of the Thomas Lawton estate. But there's so much more, not just that we've done, but going forward. So again, I want to thank you. I'm going to read the proclamation that the town of Scituate, the Board of Selectmen, the current that we put together. Scituate Historical Society Proclamation. Whereas the Scituate Historical Society was founded on August 23rd, 1970, with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, this year, 2017, marks the centenary of the incorporation of the Scituate Historical Society. Whereas the Scituate Historical Society was intended for the purpose of promoting the study of local and colonial history and the preservation of the antiquities of Old Scituate and of those municipalities which were anciently part of this town. Whereas the Historical Society now has over 550 family memberships nationwide, and provides educational programs for all ages of Scituate residents. And whereas the Society continues to research and write interesting articles and books about the history of the Scituate, please buy them at the Red Schoolhouse. They have many publications for the public to enjoy. Beauty, Strength, Speed, celebrating 100 years of Thomas W. Lawson, will be available to coincide with the Scituate centenary celebrations. And whereas the Scituate Historical Society oversees all operation and maintenance, a very important thing because of the cost today, at the 6 historical sites owned by the town of Scituate, the Mann House, Scituate Lighthouse, Bates House, Lawson Tower, Lawson Gates, the Massachusetts Humane Society Boathouse, and the Cudworth House, properties owned and managed by the Historical Society, separate and apart from the town-owned properties, include the Cudworth Barn, Old Oak and Bucket House, Stockbridge Gristmill, Grand Army Hall of the Republic, this glorious building, the schoolhouse, and the Maritime Irish and Mossing Center Museum. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen, for the town of Scituate, congratulate the Scituate Historical Society. And further, we appreciate Scituate Historical Society, its officers, its trustees, you folks, the membership, for their hard work, for all your hard work, and dedication in maintaining the town's rich history for all the current and all our future residents. Signed this day, July 22nd, 2017, Chairman of the Board, Maura Curran, Vice Chairman Anthony Vignani, Sean Harris, and myself, and also our town clerk, Kathleen Curran. Thank you very much, folks.
You're going to get away from the speaker. Thanks, John. That was good. Yes. Yeah. I had a little presentation for tonight, but I think I'll let Matt take over. He did such a good job. I can go home now, right? No? All right, let's get to the beginning. This is Scituate in 1898. Whoops, it's not working. Hello? Here we go. Touch, geez. The port, so, oh, geez. Oh, the Portland Gale. Let me try the other one. That's not working. The Portland Gale of 1898 left Scituate a mess. Pilot ship Columbia was actually made into a tea room in Sand Hills. It was, as everyone knows, a huge storm. Well, this innocent-looking boy in 1901 hit Scituate, and he became I guess what you would say another storm. He was a millionaire many times over. He actually, when he was a teenager, had hundreds of thousands of dollars. He had a knack for investing in the stock market. He worked at a bank, and what he did is he would shovel gold coins onto a scale. When the bell rang, $5,000, he'd bag it, seal it, and ship it out. But he also got inside tips on the stock market. When the president of the Cincinnati, Sandusky, and Cleveland, Ohio absconded to Canada, the stock went from $30 to $3. But he knew he was coming back, so they formed a pool, made $40,000 overnight. Well, being Tom Lawson, he bet it on a water company and lost almost all of it. He took his buddies out to eat, and he left the rest as a tip for the waiter. He started out, his first house was in Winchester. Beautiful house. He held on to that until almost the end of his life. Then he thought he should move to Boston. So he bought 2 lots, and this is 1 Charles Gate East. It's since been torn down. That was his Boston house. His wife had, as a child, rheumatic fever. So the ocean air was good for her. So he rented a house in Cohasset. It's now Jesuit Retreat. It was designed by H.H. Richardson, who did Trinity Church, among other things. And Bryant's daughter was married to Frederick Law Olmsted's son. So good connection. He actually used Olmsted later on. So anyway, he couldn't buy the house in Cohasset. So he was out riding with his wife in the horse and carriage, and they stopped and they saw a little old farmhouse in Egypt. And she said, oh, this is a nice little place to settle down. So he went out and he bought 350 acres right away. Typical of him. And he hired some workers to clear the land. Can anyone guess what the population of Scituate was in like 1901? It's like 2,400. So 1,000 people just to clear the land, 200 teams of horses. And anyone that's from Scituate, like we all are, know what you find when you clear the trees away. So they were very busy, to say the least. His landscape architect actually said, you know, you should just buy a farm. And he said, anyone can do that, but I want to build one. So some of the roads that he built, the rocks were so big, he just buried them. And he used the same procedure that the Romans used. He graded, rolled his own roads. And the property that he couldn't buy, he put a fence around. He had 14 miles of fence at one time. And within that 1 year, from 1901 to 1902, this is what he built in a year. It's amazing what money will do when you have unlimited money and you give your workers a chance to get a bonus if they quit early. This is an opposite view. This is looking west as opposed to east. This is a painting, but you can see what it looked like. You can still see the berm from the racetrack, from the train. A lot of the buildings are gone. We'll get into that. Pegasus, held by the strong hand of man. That was the logo for Dreamwald, and it was in everything. Chests, books, on the side of buildings. When you have a big estate like he started, you need your own post office. Now, this is the original post office. This did burn down. They had a firebug in Scituate, and he burnt down quite a few buildings. This was one of them. He burnt this down. He also burnt down the carpenter shop the same day Cohasset Hall, and then he lit a fire in Humrock. So this was in 1926. Thomas Lawson was actually dead when it was burnt down. This is early construction. The house on the right is what's called the lodge. That's how you'd get into his estate. If you look at the road, it's kind of a mess. You'll actually see telephone poles. Well, they didn't last long. He didn't want telephone poles, so he buried them all underground. And they still find some of them when they dig up the street. Well, he had 4 daughters. They each got married in a separate season. This is the summer wedding, which would have been Marion. What happened was when the estate was auctioned off, these gates that's the main gates, they went to Brockton Hospital. You got a 1937 Packard ambulance leaving. Since then, the gates are gone and we don't know what happened to them. He used to commute to Boston on the train, and he was concerned that it might take too long to get to Boston. So he approached the railroad and said, I want to make a deal. I want the train to run express from Egypt to Boston. Well, the train started in Plymouth. So it was kind of a good deal if you were in Plymouth, Kingston, Duxbury, Marshfield, or east of Egypt. So he never had to pay a cent. And it was 37, 38 minutes from Egypt Station to South Station. This is how he would get to the train. Kelly is driving, Patty McGinnis and Billy O'Brien are on the back. And when he got picked up in the afternoon, he would actually sometimes take the reins and he would sort of race the locomotive or the train as far as the bend on Lawson Road. Now, when he went to the train in the morning, since he was sort of subsidizing it, he would make him wait a little bit. And either Patty McGinnis or Billy O'Brien would brush off his suit and he would get on. Yeah. And he would have always the pink carnation in his lapel. One of the girls on the train said, gee, we like carnations too. Well, the next day, he threw a whole bunch of carnations on her lap. This building is still there today, and it's got the oval window. It's probably the most original of everything that's left, the interior. Fancy lights, flowers everywhere. Early construction of the Riding Academy. It was second in size only to West Point. It's 130 by 200 feet. The ring was 108 by 170. It would actually seat 3,000 people. There it is completed. This was actually at one time, was talk about that being the town hall. But what happened, it was bought by Brockton Fair for $10,000. It cost them $40,000 to get it to Brockton. And that was in 1923. In 1933, it burned down. So they got 10 years of use out of it. And we never got it as a town hall. He would put on shows for guests, his family, or whoever, and a lot of the events were held in there. He had 3 broodmare stables built on the eastern side of the tracks. They total 800 feet in length. All 3 of these stables were built in 75 days. The academy was built in 56. Each building had its own distinctive sign, a sign for the broodmare stable. And what it looked like inside. I mean, they were all spotless. They had telephones, heat, fire extinguishers. That's the stall. And he also had show horses. Now, if you look inside the show horse stable, look at the detail. Brass finials, hardwood, and a lot of events were held in there. He held a Christmas party for his employees in there every year. You can see he's got roses planted outside. They're starting to go up. Cedar posts, which he put lights on eventually. And this sign just sold at auction for $5,000. I don't know. It was sold in Connecticut. And this is his racing stable. His racing horses were trotters. So it's basically 2 400-foot stables. And in the middle was where the employees, their lunchroom and recreation area was on the 2nd floor, and the top floor was where they would sleep. It was built in 72 days. The roses are starting to climb the walls. He had roses that were everywhere. That's his daughter Gladys on Gorgeous. And that's a painting of Gorgeous. Now, the first two horses he bought were Gorgeous and Glorious. So after that, every show horse was either Gorgeous or Glorious something. That's his daughter Jeannie, and his wife next to him, Tom Lawson, and then Kelly, his driver, and I'm not sure if it's Patty McGinnis or Billy O'Brien. That's how you would enter the estate. The manor house actually was under there. That's his son Arnold. Arnold used to ride a lot of horses and race them, and that's Gorgeous Whirling Prince. And this is Bolrama. This was called the charity horse. Every cent that it made, he donated to charity. At one event, he won $50,000. Tom, what did you do with that money?
We gave $25,000 to a black children's hospital, and we gave $25,000 to a white children's hospital.
Wow, and what kind of shoes did that horse have?
Well, silver, of course.
Yeah, the horse actually raced on silver horseshoes. I guess when you get money, you know, you can pretty much do what you want. It did lose one, well, it was a series of races, and when he had forgot his lucky watch and he blamed it on himself. This is Glorious Bonnie. This was considered a pony, and it was entered in 45 competitions, came in first 45 times. A lot of his animals would never lose a competition. Glorious Flying Cloud, and Kelly the driver, there was a song called Glorious Kelly, and when he would enter the show ring, the band would usually play that song. Ponce de Leon. And this is, I want to say, not a typical park coach for. These horses, I don't think ever lost. And what was unusual about this, they were all stallions. Stallions typically don't get along, but they did. And they took home quite a few trophies. This is Daredevil. Daredevil was probably his favorite horse, so much that he built a stable for Daredevil and other stallions. Now, as we said, stallions sometimes can be testier on other because they're all males. So we had this built like a horseshoe. So when they looked out, they couldn't see each other. However, they got along just great. You can see one coming out inside. See the telephone? Not too many people had telephones back then. Early construction, you can see the cedar post. Now he's got a fancier light on it. The building in front of the two horses is what would become the forge, which was his blacksmith shop, and the racing stable. There's the forge. This building is still around. It's been moved to Captain Pierce Road. Now, we had carpenters not just build his buildings, they built birdhouses for him, too. And there they are up on the tree. Inside the forge, they could actually shoe 8 horses at once. I believe that the anvil went to the Egypt garage. Charlie Lane's father, I believe, was a blacksmith, and Frank Hammond. And next to the forge was the duck pond. What's unique about this duck pond, it was tiled. You can still see a little depression in where it was. And his ducks were there, and he had a crazy goose that would show up at night and sleep with the ducks and then leave the next day. He also had cows. If you can tell the size of the cow barn, because if you look to the left, you can see a horse coming out. The horse, it was designed so the horses could go through and drop hay on one side. This is Flying Fox. That's a lot of bull. So he paid $50,000 for this bull. He outbid the Vanderbilts, and this was what he anchored his cattle industry with. Mr. Robinson with another one of his cows. Now what he did is each building had its own distinctive door knocker. He had workhorses that were around 2,000 pounds. And they were kept here, which is on Bossy Lane. It's the second building in. And he thought that they would do better on wooden floors, but he had to replace the floors every 6 months because they were so big. In front of that is the farmhouse. This is where a lot of the employees slept. He had a library there for them. And I believe he had a bank in there for the employees too. So he had like 3 libraries and a bank, a teacher for the employees. Some of them couldn't speak English. That's inside for lunch. Now, he did like dogs. He had about 150 of them. And as you can tell, what his favorite dogs were. Now, there he is. Now, I kind of think that Thomas Lawson was a lot like the bulldog. You either like him or you don't. And here we go. One of these, I think it was Champion Fashion, I never lost a competition. They all had special collars, all made differently, kind of. Some of them were still around. And they did win a few trophies. This is not all of them. And there's the kennel. The kennel is still around today, as I said. It's not the same as that, it's a house now, but he did have a chef in there for his dogs. The poultry house. Does it look familiar? Country Way. I don't know if Al's here, but that's Al's house. Dutch, this is a windmill. The works were imported from Holland. It had 60-foot arms, and you could see this from the ocean. At that time, most of the trees were cut down. This burnt down in 1924. If you look to the right, that's the fire station. So go figure. There we go. The building on the left is the Dovecote. Now, if you look at the fence, he's got a rose planted. He planted one at every other post. Dorothy Perkins red rambler roses, and they would eventually cover everything. 14 miles of fence. He had a paint superintendent that it was a pretty easy job at first. But later on, not so much. Now, the fire station is still around today as a private home. The cow barn is behind it. And there's his ladder truck, the engine, and the hose cart. The carpenter's shop and then storage for some of his wagons. This was one of the buildings that was burnt down by the firebug. This is kind of a cool house. Can you guess what this is? Believe it or not, that's the sewage plant. Maybe that's why the windows are open, or the window's open. The Bantam House, which the cupola is on Grove Street in Scituate on top of a barn. It was put there by Ken Gawley. Got struck by lightning. He spent more money on lightning rods than he did on the cupola. And now it's in Norwell Center. When you have a lot of animals, you need a hospital. This is the hospital stable. He had the only 2 buildings that were similar or alike was the hospital and the foaling stable. And there it is on Country Way. A lot of the buildings were moved because they were so well built, they'd just move them. There you can see some of the liniments or medicines on the table, the phone. I don't see any sick horses though. He had a 9-acre polo field with a practice track and a racetrack around it. It would seat around 10,000 people. He had his own viewing stand, or judge's stand. There's a replica now by Dreamwald Hall. That had burnt down. Now, World War I, he was very concerned about the troops not getting proper food. So he wrote a letter to Governor McCall. Now, Governor McCall's son married Thomas Lawson's daughter, Dorothy. So there was a connection. But he wanted an answer right away. He was going to turn Dreamworld into a canning farm. And that's beans planted in the racetrack. Looking west, you can see that they're laying out the 3 broodmare stables. You can see the boxcars on the siding, the racing stable, and in the background you can see Lawson Tower being covered up. When they moved in, there was a black standpipe, and his wife didn't like the looks of it. And since he built the farm for his wife, and pretty much would do whatever she wanted, he sent his architect to Europe. He started in London, or in England. He went as far as Constantinople, found a castle on the Rhine River. They copied the design and built Lawson Tower for, I think, around $60,000. Almost done. They did have one fatality. Someone fell off the scaffolding and did pass away, but that was it. The gates on Branch Street, you can see the tower. Now, he had his own bell ringer that would play the chimes. And one day he decided to play under the bamboo tree. Well, the selectmen didn't approve of that. They thought it was too frivolous for Scituate. So he had to submit a playlist of religious and patriotic songs that had to be approved. These are the gates at Beaver Dam on Lawson Road. This was called the Flower Way. Now, if you look down, you can see the roses are starting to take over. His horses are having a little fun in one of the meadows. He never did anything small. This is the biggest tree that ever came out of Oregon at the time. It was 170, the flagpole is 172 feet tall. It's in 18 tons of concrete. And they couldn't get it down by rail, so they had to use Teamsters. They actually broke through the Fall River Bridge. It took them a while to get it out. But you could actually tell the weather by the flagpole because he had flags he would fly. He had one flag was a smaller one called the storm flag. So if that was up, you knew you couldn't go out fishing. The biggest flag he had was 75 feet by 50. He hired a local character named Shady Barry to paint the flagpole when it was up. So he did, and when he came down, he said, that's one job he'll never check, because Thomas Lawson checked on everything. He had houses or cottages built for his employees. This is the manager's house on Curtis Street, where his paint supervisor lived on Curtis Street. This house is at the corner of Branch, Curtis, and Country Way. There's 3 houses that are similar in design. They were built for 3 of his daughters. His daughter Dorothy moved to Oregon. I don't know if you remember, at one time there was like a natural archway of trees that went in. They look familiar, huh? That was a gift to the Civil War veterans for Lawson Park. He loved elephants, and 3 was his lucky number. And I don't know if you remember, the rite of passage for seniors was to paint bikinis on them in the pond. And my father would have to get his little boat out and paint them gray again. Early construction of Dreamworld Hall. This was considered the front. This faced the ocean. Now it's landscaped. You can see the flag. In between the 2 chimneys in the middle is a rooster, because this was his farm. When you went to Dreamworld, you'd come around the front and you'd go by what was called the service wing, where the kitchen was. And that's how you would stay dry. It had 22 rooms. That's a monkey in the cage that did get away. And I don't know if anyone's been to the Museum of Fine Arts at all in the courtyard. You'll see two Great Danes. Anna Hyatt Huntington. There you go. So, looks familiar, huh? He actually told Anna Hyatt Huntington, he said, anything you make, I'll buy. The entranceway to Dreamworld Hall, it's got the door knocker, and if you look at the light up above, it's supposed to be like the globe. He actually had glass blown into the metal rings. I mean, the detail of what he did is absolutely incredible. It's got sheaves, it looks like carrots or wheat, shamrocks. He was very superstitious. This is how you would get in. This is the reception hall. It's like a Wedgwood design in the ceiling. Antique copper plates with gas lights. Skins on the floor, oriental carpeting. Decorated for Christmas. Looking down towards the living room, there's a pretty good-sized Christmas tree down there, obviously. And this is the rear veranda. Those are bay trees that he kept in his greenhouse in the winter. The chairs, the cushions were stuffed with pine needles so they would be a little bit fragrant. The dining hall, notice the chandelier in the middle, designed by Tiffany. If you look on the walls, you see sconces that are actually the pumpkin blossoms. Here we go. The cup on the table on the left is the Lawson cup for yachting, which never was used because he couldn't race in the America's Cup. We'll get into that. Here it is. He designed this, and Russell Crook, who was a famous sculptor and tile maker, made them for him. It's the stock market. So you can see one bear is fighting off the bees and the other's eating the honey with nothing bothering it. You can see the pumpkin on the fireplace. In one of the corners, he had a built-in hutch with a peacock up above. The mirror in the back would slide. You can see one of his trophy bowls is on the left. He actually had crystal in there that was given to him by Tsar Nicholas. Now, if you look on the left and on the right, you'll see two screens, room dividing screens. Those just recently went for auction. And the one on the left went to a friend of the society in Florida who was a naval architect, so he likes the fact that it's the Nina Pinta Santa Maria. And Mary Porter and I went to Marlboro and bought the one on the right. And it's at the schoolhouse now, and it is incredible. If you look way down, you'll see a few elephants. That's the screen that's at the schoolhouse. And that's the one that's in Florida. Now, Bobby Stevens, who graduated a year ahead of me, and he's a big Lawson fan. He has a lot of memorabilia. There was a breakfast nook in the dining hall. And when you took tours of the estate, at one time you could actually get a pass and tour the estate. And he used to lay all the silver out on the table so you could see it. Decorated for one of his daughter's weddings, I believe. And if you look, it looks like, I don't know if it's what kind of tail it is there, but if you look up above that, you'll see a clock. Does that look familiar? I know Allison knows where it is. Scituate Federal. Alan Wheeler found that in Beacon Hill. We think that Pegasus was at the top, but not anymore. And we said he liked elephants. He had 3,000 at one time. And Mr. Pepper would count them. Sometimes if you thought someone broke in the house, you'd call him up, he'd have to come over and count the elephants. Now, all 3,000 weren't in Scituate, please. They were in Young's Hotel in Charles Gate East and his office on State Street. In the window on the right is Coming Through the Rye by Frederick Remington. Also, Bronc-Buster is in the fireplace to the left, and to the right is Abraham Lincoln. The organ, if you look up above the organ, you'll see there's a painting, a frieze that goes around the ceiling. That's Bacchus, who's the god of wine and agriculture. And if you look a little farther down, you'll see one of his bulldogs, Champion Fashion, I believe. He had his animals painted around the ceiling. Champion Fashion was one of them. Connecting the living room to the bachelor's quarters was the conservatory. Those are all hand-painted tiles on the ceiling. There he is in his bedroom. This is the library. This is probably one of the coolest rooms in Dreamworld Hall. If you look at the ceiling, he had the constellations in the oval. Around that is the signs of the zodiac, and in the corners were the four seasons. This was painted by Vesper George, who was a painter in Boston. Now, if you look at the woodwork, he had 500 gnomes carved into it. They're actually even on the table. And they're doing literary things like writing, carrying books, printing. One of the lights, and on the right is Shakespeare. He also had a billiard hall. And he had a green slate fireplace carved. It took 6 years. And it's the legend of Captain Kidd. It was rumored that Captain Kidd left a treasure under a linden tree on the property. So it shows the pirates bringing the loot, burying it under the tree. In the last scene, Captain Kidd kills the other pirates, so no one knows where it is. Notice the carnation in his lapel. His wife liked the smell of hay, so they would pile hay near the window so she could smell it, because she was sickly for a long time. Here he is with 3 of his daughters. Getting ready to play tennis. The tennis courts were, if you look at Dreamworld Hall from the ball field, they were to the right. That's a portrait of Mrs. Lawson. Now, he built Dreamworld for her. 1902 it was done. She passed away in 1906. He was very distraught. She was the love of his life. He ceased all activity for a while. He actually didn't do any business at all, and it took a while. His kids finally convinced him to get out. They took him to Europe, get him out of the house. This is what he built for her, because the big house was a little bit too hectic for her, so he built what's called the nest, a typical 8-room Cape, he thought. He sent his people down to the Cape to buy antique furniture, and I don't think anyone realized how much it was worth, the furniture, when it was sold. He actually had in the living room, on the floor, painted an oriental carpet. It's still there today, but it's under a rug, so it won't get ruined. Covered with roses, like most of his buildings were eventually. That's the only 7-masted schooner ever built, the Thomas Lawson, named after him. It actually did okay carrying coal up and down the coast, and they decided to send it to England with petroleum. And it sank on Friday the